To order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing because following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
allegiance to the state
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Why do you always face that way?
Blank.
You always specifically face that way.
Do I?
Yeah. Are you on mute, by the way? There you are.
Thank you, and I would like to request any of the call-in users and anyone else to please put your phones on mute as to not interrupt the meeting. We do have some call-in users who have requested to speak in the public comment section, and we will get to that shortly. I would like to have the clerk read the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, at 7 p.m. on Thursday, February 18th, 2021, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you, and I would like to request all to put their cell phones and any other electronic devices on silent, and also call-in users, please, just a reminder to keep your phones on mute until you're requested to speak for the individuals that had requested public comment. And so we will move on to roll call. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Beestrom.
Here.
Bizotto.
Here.
Boots.
Here.
Book.
Present.
Butke.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Seiler.
Here.
Conway. Dickinson.
Here.
Drabeck.
Here.
Pfeifrick.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Gaber.
Here.
Gibbs.
Here.
Gonering.
Here.
Guild.
Here.
Gums. Harris.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Krause. Lamont.
Present.
Leahy.
Here.
Lowe.
Here.
Mask.
Here.
McEwen.
Here.
Oberbeck.
Present.
Opal.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Rosenberg.
Here.
Schley.
Here.
Seefelt.
Here.
Soybert.
Here.
Stark.
Here.
Van Cray.
Here.
Vol.
Here.
Zhang. Thank you.
And thank you. I would like to welcome all the visitors, including all of the individuals who have joined us on this meeting by WebEx, by phone. And so I look forward to having a discussion. We will move on to public comment. We have 4 people that have signed up for public comment, not to exceed 15 minutes. So roughly there will be 3.5 minutes for each individual to provide public comment. And we will start with Mr. Bruce Bohr. You are welcome to unmute and provide your public comment to the board.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Bohr. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I have a brief comment on the presentation titled a community for all. The presentation offers a number of comparisons of the relative conditions of various identity groups in Marathon County. The word equity is used many times in this presentation. I believe the word equity now means that government believes it has the power to take specific actions to guarantee equal outcomes for all identity groups. This is incorrect. Government has the duty to take specific actions to provide equal opportunity for all people. I have two questions this evening. The first question, the slide titled Marathon County's Comprehensive Plan contains a statement, promote health equity. Please give me an example of a specific action you plan to take to achieve this directive. My second question, have any of you checked the constitutionality of using government power to give one citizen priority over another citizen based on their identity groups? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Boer. Next will be Aaron Crawford. Go ahead and please unmute, and your 2.5 minutes would start.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs and supervisors. I'm also commenting on the Diversity Affairs presentation of Community for All resolution. I've had the chance to review the PowerPoint slides in the packet for tonight, and that's noted absolutely necessary to preface the presentation forthcoming. Before the board is convinced into believing that Marathon County is steeped in discrimination due to systemic racism and other social injustices, keep in mind that what you're looking at is a lot of data that's pointing to a host of different outcomes from all various people groups. Different outcomes are a good thing because we all have the freedom to make our own decisions. In essence, correlation of all of this data does not equal causation. Correlation of health, income, institutional injustice disparities does not mean the cause is prejudice, systemic racism, and other social injustices. Just because the presenters are pointing out these differences does not mean the answer lies in creating equity. The word equity is very easy to think that it's just another synonym for equality. Equality means each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities. Equity, on the other hand, recognizes that each person has different circumstances and it's to create or allocate the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. You can ask any parent of children. They'll tell you, I've raised all of my children with the same opportunities, yet they chose different paths in life, schooling, careers, spouses, etc. And why is that? Because each one of us has personal choice and freedom to choose. How in the world could you force equal outcomes or equity for all members of one's family? It would be impossible to create without foregoing one's own free will. And likewise, according to the resources in this presentation forthcoming, if equity is what the board desires, I would like to know how the board envisions reallocating the exact same resources to level the playing field for all of us in order to reach equal outcomes. How is that possible without impacting our free will? And by the way, I find it very interesting how the fiscal impact is reflected as none in this resolution. I would also like to know a concrete example how the board would change Marathon County's social systems for the goal of equity and justice. Let's use hiring practices as an example to equal the playing field. Shouldn't it be obvious that choosing to hire a candidate based on race, ethnicity, nationality, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, physical and or mental capabilities, and religious beliefs is actually biased? People should be choosing instead on people's qualifications and character. Marathon County is a community for all. However, this language is not a community for all. It is divisive, and it will not give Marathon County the utopic outcome the Diversity Affairs Commission is hoping for. In summary, I would caution any language forthcoming regarding this term equity. As you can see, it is a dangerous word which leads to soft totalitarianism. I would also point out that much of this data forthcoming from the United Way, Chamber of Commerce, and Marathon County itself was pre-COVID. The labor force and opportunities have declined greatly because
20 seconds
because
is
our
left
state has
on
been
your
shut.
time. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yep. In conclusion, I'm just stating that equity and personal freedom cannot exist at the same time. And I would firmly ask that all freedom-conscious supervisors not support this resolution as it has been created. I would encourage a motion to be brought forward for an oppositional presentation of the presentation that is forthcoming before any voting occurs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we go next to Gail Marshall. Gail, are you on the phone?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Gibbs and fellow supervisors. I'd like to quote famous psychologist Jordan Peterson, who spoke on the dangers of group identities. Quote, "You're an exemplar of your race, sex, or sexual preference. Either you're a victim or an oppressor, for no wrong can be done by anyone in the former group and no good by the latter. Such ideas of victimization do nothing but justify use of power and engender intergroup conflict." And I don't think conflict that's end quote. I don't think conflict is what you're after with this resolution. To unite people, it isn't a wise idea to divide them into groups. And I agree with Ms. Crawford, who said, you can't have freedom of choice and equal outcomes. However, if you want the equal outcomes, you're going to have to take away freedoms. Lastly, I believe that I have the same dream. I'm sorry, someone is not on
Can
mute.
somebody please put your phone on mute if you're not speaking? Thank you. Sorry, Gail, go ahead.
I have the same dream as Martin Luther King Jr., that all persons would be judged on the content of their character rather than any other immutable characteristics. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now, we have one individual in person, Mary Thompson. If you wish, please use the microphone up here.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs and Marathon County Board members. I also am addressing the issue of Community for All presentation by Diversity Affairs, and I did look at the packet that was included online. And I noticed that it had a lot of surveys and demographics, and I noticed a lot of graphs and charts, and I wonder, did Marathon County residents pay for this? And did they send out a survey? Because I don't remember getting a survey. And so I'm a little concerned about that. And it was also brought to my attention that this is the 4th time this is being brought to your attention. And to me, that means they just keep repackaging it, redecorating it, and representing it. And that, to me, seems like a bullying of our Marathon County Board and our process here. And I don't approve of that. And how often is that allowed? Is there a restriction of time? Between times they can bully us again. That kind of upsets me. So going back into the whole meat of the issue, the diversity. I think we have diversity in our county, and I think we have a very good reflection of that diversity in our elected officials. And I think that they responsibly discuss every issue with that in mind and make good, sound decisions, and I applaud all of you on that. And therefore, I do not think we need anything more, because these strike me as socialist tactics that use the Hegelian dialect. Create a problem or identify a problem, focus on that problem, magnify it, blow it out of proportion, and then come forth with only one solution. And that solution usually involves us losing our freedoms and losing our voice and losing money from our taxpayers. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the individuals who addressed the board. We will move on And if there is no objection by the board, I would like to take item 6A out of order. Is there any objection by the board? Excuse me, 9C, 6A, from the Health and Human Services Committee and the Executive Committee, authorizing the county officials to take action necessary to facilitate operation of a regional COVID-19 vaccination site in Marathon County. Is there any objection to that being taken out of order? And so do we have Joan Toyer on? Joan Toyer, our health officer, is going to be addressing this.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs, and good evening, everybody. Marathon County is currently being evaluated for having a Wisconsin Department of Health Services regional site placed in Marathon County. Just to give you a little bit of background, the Wisconsin Department of Health Services has entered into a contract with AMI, Expeditory Health Care, and it is a company that supplies medical services. And the contract is to set up 6 to 10 large, what we call throughput vaccine sites throughout Wisconsin. And when we talk about large-scale vaccine sites, we're talking about up to 1,000 doses per day. So that's how many people could be vaccinated. Marathon County is being evaluated to be a site for the north central Wisconsin area, and it would serve not only Marathon County, but the counties that make up north central Wisconsin as well. You may be asking, so why is Marathon County being considered? There's a number of reasons for that. One is we have population density. When you think about Marathon County, Portage, Wood, Lincoln, and Lang Lake, we make up much of the population in north central Wisconsin. In addition, they looked at things like social vulnerability, which has to do with things like income as well as race and ethnicity makeup. We are considered a media hub. Marathon County Health Department, as well as Marathon County and in general, much of the information that gets pushed out about public health, particularly around COVID, has been through our health department. We are also considered, or if you look at our major highway system, a transportation hub. So if you're looking at people coming from neighboring counties, we're easy to access. And then lastly, part of the reason why we're being evaluated is because of our resources. Having facilities that could manage that many people being vaccinated in one day. Also looking at where the workforce is. The AMI is committed to hiring locally whenever they can before they recruit outside the area. And then also looking at the fact that we have nursing schools as well as a medical college housed here. You may have heard on the media, Rock County was selected as one of the first sites, and they started their site this Tuesday. And we are continuing to be evaluated. And on a call I had on Tuesday with the planning team, it is looking very promising that we will be a site. So in terms of what are the benefits for Marathon County, this site will provide another option for individuals who are reluctant and will not necessarily present at one of our health clinic sites. As I've shared earlier, we are fortunate, Marathon County, we do have strong healthcare systems and healthcare partners who have really been taking the charge in getting vaccines into people's arms. Part of the purpose of this site is that when more vaccine is available, we will then be able to push out more vaccines in a given day. So a site like this would be capable of putting out 1,000 doses per day for 5 days a week. The other benefit for us is that Marathon County then, instead of our resources going into setting up such a site, because that is what we would probably be doing once more vaccine would be available, is actually setting up a large-scale site like this. So instead of us putting our resources in that, we are actually going to be able to put our resources in terms of furthering outreach efforts. And that can look like getting information out to residents who are hesitant about vaccine, who need information in a way that is more meaningful for them to be able to understand the benefits and being able to make a confident decision. It also will give us the ability to continue to work with our community partners who are tied to and work with vulnerable populations to identify what are the barriers and trying to reduce those barriers so people will present to the clinic. So the DHS, the contracted company, AMI, would be responsible for day-to-day operations, and they'll be responsible for hiring clinic staff with a commitment of looking here within the area, and then, if not, capable of recruiting outside of that. So that's where things are at right now, and we hope to learn more about being a site, and I anticipate that would be after or around March 8th. So at this point, I'll just pause, stop, and field any questions that our county board supervisors may have.
Thank you, Joan. Is there any questions by supervisors? Supervisor Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just had a question, and obviously in the packet, it states at this time there's not a hard figure on the cost of this, and of course that's probably going to develop over time as this goes on. Do we have any idea what the anticipated cost could be from Marathon County funds?
I can address that, or at least take a stab at that. We are looking at, we've looked at 3 sites. We have made a recommendation to move forward for the state and for AMI to actually evaluate the site that we have recommended. There's no anticipated cost. It's going to be given to us for free. In terms of resources, what I would see is it would be staff resources that would be coming through the health department. And we do have COVID grant funds that I would anticipate would cover that.
Any other questions? Supervisor Jacobson.
It sounds like obviously we've already entered into a contract with AMI. Do we anticipate having to enter into other contracts with either different entities and or the state of Wisconsin if we're selected as a site?
Well, the state of Wisconsin has entered into a contract with AMI, not Marathon County at this point.
Does Marathon County anticipate entering into any contracts?
I do not anticipate that we would enter into a contract, but that's a really good question. I know that we would probably enter into a service agreement with the sites, but that's something that needs to be worked out in terms of, is that an agreement between the Department of Health Services and the site, or is that between Marathon County and the site?
Okay, any other questions? Supervisor Gaber?
I just have one question. Have we determined when we're going to get more COVID vaccine? I know we're preparing for more of them, but I understand we only get 70,000 a week. Is that what it's still at?
It actually, today I was on a media call with the Deputy Secretary Julie Wilms Van Dyke, and she indicated that next week we were looking at 113,000. So it has increased, and we anticipate it to be level at that for the next 3 weeks. I think there's a lot of things in play in terms of whether or not manufacturers can increase their production. And the other thing in play is Johnson & Johnson has applied for emergency use authorization, and that's being heard on the 26th of February. So that would also potentially provide some additional vaccine. But at this time, vaccine is limited. I think Julie indicated that current providers requested 390,000 doses this week. So you can do the math. It's about 27% or a third of what is available. The other thing I will share is we have been in conversation with our healthcare system partners. They actually joined one of the initial planning meetings with state representatives as well as a representative from AMI. And, one of the things that we're all very aware of is there is limited vaccine. And so part of this would be pacing. In Rock County, they are starting with 200 doses a week. And I would anticipate we will be starting with smaller doses as well initially until more vaccine is available. Part of the challenge here is it takes time to set up sites, and we want to be ready when the vaccine is more readily available.
I also attended a call for NACO, National Counties Association, and on that call there was several representatives from the White House and administration, and there was a increase in the vaccine, but that's being allocated, as Joan has indicated, and projected for the next 3 weeks that is being provided to the state. They did indicate that they hope that the CDC would be making a decision on the emergency application by Johnson & Johnson by the end of the month. But there is limited supply in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at this point, but they do have capacity, and they do have an order with the U.S. government for a huge amount of the vaccine as soon as it is, if it is approved. So, any other discussion, any other questions? Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clear something up. So if we get this vaccination site, that may affect the amount of vaccines that the hospitals could give out?
That was a discussion point on the NACO call this morning, and the answer to that was no. They were clarifying that was initially thought, but the super sites were not going to be, and the state is setting these up, but the super sites were not going to be affecting the other distribution.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gomes.
Just a question. Do you have to have a negative test a certain number of days before you have the vaccine?
Joan?
Yeah, the answer is no. We would screen for whether or not, if you've been exposed to somebody who has had COVID, you would, be isolated and not eligible. And if you've had COVID, I don't know the technical, because it's not in my scope to know that level of detail, but there is a waiting period, and all that information would be shared, and it's actually on our website, but that is part of the process when people are registered and they come on site, is to screen for that.
Okay, any other questions by board? The administrator would like to address the board.
Just I think in following up, Joan, and please jump in at any point, but in follow-up to Supervisor Jacobson's kind of line of questions about what the obligation that the county would take on, the resolution before you is rather broad. because as Joan alluded to, when we began down this path, and we're still working our way down the path, we have multiple sites that are being evaluated. And as Joan alluded to, the preferred site right now that the state is evaluating, the county would have very minimal, if any, additional work we need to take on relative to signing a contract, for example, to lease a space. There are other, in the event a site is not of that caliber, that is, we would need to enter into a lease, that is something that the county would then look to do to facilitate this vaccination site coming to Marathon County. But the current site, just as an overview, we wouldn't have to enter into a lease. It's already got cleaning in place. It has IT resources in place. So those are some of the things that would be necessary for a vaccination site to be implemented. And depending on the nature of the site that the state approves, our role may change. But our current preferred site that Joan referenced, based on what we see right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Joan, very little, if any, work that the county would need to do to facilitate that site being usable.
Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you, Joan. Thank you for the information. And we will be taking it up and may have additional information next Thursday when the board actually votes on this resolution. Okay, we will then move on to education presentation reports. Item 8A, standing committee chairpersons or designees. Any reports by standing committee chairpersons or designees? Okay, then we will move on to item 8B, a Community for All presentation by Diversity Affairs. And we have the chairman, Supervisor Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to invite Supervisor Conway to come up here as well because he is going to be helping me with this presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, along with the county supervisors for your help. I believe we also have on call Commissioner Latanya Campbell. Are you on here as well?
Yes.
Thank you. So just to give a little overview about the purpose of today's presentation. Today's presentation is not going to be obviously, the county board is not going to be discussing or debating the merit of the Community for All resolution, but rather today is more of an informational presentation on the finding or results that our Diversity Affairs Commission were able to uncover from our research into the tolerance of our community, tolerance from our community. So to give a little overview, I will be giving a little bit discussions about the Diversity Affairs Charter, the mission, the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan. Commissioner Campbell will then talk a little bit about the Life Report and the Alice Report. Supervisor Conway will cover the CDC and health disparities. I will then talk a little bit about the recommendations from the Chamber of Commerce and the Department of Justice recommendations, and then Supervisor Conway will cover the contents of the resolution, and Commissioner Campbell will present and give a background on the Towards One Wausau video. So let's go ahead and start. So we currently have up on the screen here our current Marathon County core values. Core values. You will notice that under the list of our core values, we have listed diversity. Marathon County has always prided ourselves for our service, our integrity, our quality of public service, and of course, our diversity. As a matter of fact, we have deemed this so important and so crucial that we have decided to list this as one of our core values. And in an effort to help and address the diversity and to help address and ensure that Marathon County is a welcoming and inclusive community, the Marathon County Board of Supervisors had set the following as the Diversity Affairs Commission's mission. The Diversity Affairs Commission exists to ensure that Marathon County is an open, inclusive, and diverse place to live and work, and to achieve racial and ethnic equity and advocate for minority populations throughout Marathon County, to foster cross-cultural understanding and embrace our diversity. This was approved by the Marathon County Board of Supervisors at our 2020 April board meeting. And as a result of that admission, the commission is charged with making recommendations to the executive committee relative to internal Marathon County operating procedures, and with engaging external entities in support of the following strategies identified within the county's 2016 comprehensive plan. 1, promote health equity. 2, develop a plan to reduce and eliminate health and social disparities. 3, promote cultural competence. And 4, cultivate an environment where cultural diversity can flourish. This was the task that was charged to the Diversity Affairs Commission. Next, I will yield the floor over to Commissioner Campbell, who will provide to you the results from the Life and Alice report.
Thank you, Supervisor Zhang. Are you on the 6th slide?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So United Way has 2 projects to collect data on the quality of life of community members. They have the Alice Report and also the Life Report. The Marathon County Life Report is a self-report assessment that was created in 1997, and it's updated every 2 years to identify local trends and evaluate the community's strengths and areas of opportunity. In 2019 through 2020, the report encompassed 4 sections: prosperous, health, safety, and connections. The Life Report Steering Committee, it generates a call to action based on that data collected from respondents in hopes it will motivate the community to enact change. The 2019-2020 report revealed 7 calls to action, including diversity, inclusion, and belonging. The call to action reads as follows: to create a community that is diverse, inclusive, and everyone has a sense of belonging. Can you progress the slide, please? So some major takeaways from the Life Report is that respondents reported a continued decline in satisfaction with how welcoming the community is. This is 20% lower than 2013. Additionally, 44%, as you can see on the slide, of respondents said that they were satisfied with the level of tolerance in the community. Excuse me, they were not satisfied. Finally, in 2019, more than a third of the respondents reported at least one incident of discrimination, which is a 19-point increase from 2017. Can you progress the slide? So here, the indicator for a sense of community, according to respondents, suggests that Marathon County is less welcoming, connected, and tolerant of people in minority groups. So if you recall, a third of the respondents experienced at least one incident of discrimination. Discrimination is unjust or prejudicial treatment of people based on the group, class, or category in which they are perceived to belong to. And here, on this particular slide, you can see that we have areas of opportunity for the community to feel like they not only are welcome, but that they belong. So the Marathon County Life Report, it also shows data that reveals there are disparities in wages, income, and the criminal justice system, as well as the education. The key takeaway reflected disparity in wages disproportionately, you went back, oh, thank you. Wages and disproportionately affecting people of color. And the national data shows people of color are less likely to be called for an interview, even if their education and experience is the same. Likewise, women earn less than men with the same education attainment. So women's earnings as a percentage to men locally are 74.5, and then nationally is 72.8. Can you progress the slide? And you can see thank you. So racial disparities within the justice system negatively impact individuals and the community. According to the Academy of Pediatrics, students who have been suspended are as much 10 times more likely to drop out of high school. Individuals who do not complete high school can expect to earn considerably less over a working career and have a fewer educational and employment opportunities. So this graph reflects the racial disparities within our local county jail. Although indigenous populations reflect only 0.6% of the population, they represent 3.6% of the jail population. Likewise, African Americans make up 0.8% of the community, with over 10% of the jail population. Asian Americans make up 5.9% of the community and 6.7% of the jail population. And research shows that crimes are not committed at a higher rate. Can you please progress the slide? So, opportunities for action. Marathon County will need to ensure a diverse and culturally inclusive culture to secure its long-term future, whether it's attracting millennials, including LGBTQ perspectives, or tapping the contributions of minority populations. Regional viability requires that everyone is welcome, engaged, and connected in the community. Community and business leaders have the responsibility to explore additional diversity and inclusion strategies to supplement those in process. Exciting opportunities exist to share ideas with other communities. Establishing additional benchmarks will help track progress and create parity for populations that have historically experienced disadvantages and discrimination. Thank you. So the second project that United Way worked on to collect data, again, on the quality of life of its community members, is the ALICE report. So ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. What the ALICE report is designed to capture is the people whose income is more than the federal poverty level, but less than the state's designated amount for the cost of living. So as you can see here on this particular slide, how much these particular ethnic groups make in a year. So for 2010, white workers had the highest median income, which you can see on this particular graph. Can you go ahead and progress to the next slide? Black and Hispanic workers in Wisconsin, both men and women, are more likely to be unemployed than Asian and white workers. Unemployment has improved for white and Asian workers, reaching a low of 3% in 2016. The unemployment rate for Black workers also fell dramatically, but from a high of 22% in 2010 to 12% in 2016. Still twice the rate for Hispanic workers and 4 times the rate for white and Asian workers. More than 10% of the overall Wisconsin population was self-employed in 2015, but less than 5% of workers of color were self-employed. Thank you. You want to go ahead and proceed?
I will, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so head to the Centers for Disease Control. In the resolution, we say that we can recognize disparities within the county, like the jail and so forth, and across the nation, CDC. The takeaway from this slide is where it comes down to achieving health equity. Barriers must be removed so that everyone has a fair opportunity to be as healthy as possible. And that is a theme that you're going to hear again and again, because when you're working with equality and equity, you could either add supports or you could remove barriers. Usually it's a combination thereof. Removing barriers, however, is free. I like that. And is usually easier, and it makes more sense. There's no reason to reinvent something if you can just take away and have, or just do it something a little bit different and have a better outcome. Long-standing systemic health and social inequities have put many people from racial and ethnic minority groups at increased risk of getting sick and dying from COVID. They've done tremendous amount of data collection, as you can imagine. I'm sure lots of you have looked at the sites. And they've also done a pretty good job tracking who's getting affected more than who isn't. And because of, like they say, examples of systemic inequality in the healthcare system, housing, education, criminal justice, and finance. People that are lower wage earners, and people of color specifically, are being affected with COVID more because they're more often the frontline workers, and they're more often, or they're less likely, I should say, to have healthcare providers that they can get coverage from. Oops. And there's a little graphic from them, which I stole. Percent of population, this is Wisconsin data now, but from the CDC. Twice as likely in Wisconsin for Black people to be hospitalized from COVID. Native Americans, same. Hispanic, higher. Whites, lower. That's what we call a disparity. Now, disparities, the Marathon County data has the Pulse, which has more information than you'd ever want to collect from the county. And on it, you can search, the link's right there. Each and every disparity comes right to you. You can look at anything from tooth decay up to different kinds of cancers. And you can see that people of color are affected more than people who aren't. Speaking of disparities, I live in the DC Everett School District. Out-of-school suspensions, as you've heard, lead more to people not graduating from high school. 10 times, I believe. More people from that end up in jail. So if you look at this little graph here, look what we see. White people, white students, 6%. Black students, slightly higher. Slightly being the understatement. And I'm not just picking on DC Everest, okay? This is just where I live. All of them, you can sort it by school district, and they all look like this. And it's not because, the superintendent's horrible, Dr. Gilmore's great, don't send me letters. I know the principals are great, school board members are great, there's one standing right here. It's not because they're all steaming hot racists, okay? I'm the president of one of their schools, so, but it's showing a disparity. And that disparity is that the implicit bias that people have when you have white students acting up and you have black students acting up, same behaviors. The white students, well, they're having trouble focusing. They get diagnosed with ADHD more. We need to, get them to focus more. When you have black students, they're aggressive. They're acting out. They're stubborn. They're just not listening. We better call their parents. That's why it's 6 times higher. Now, if you're thinking, oh, let's just pick on them, or if you're living in the country, you don't have a lot of black folks, which some don't, and I'll pick on Marathon for a little bit, we've got Hispanic students. That is even worse. And it's not just Marathon again. It's, if you can go and look at each and every one of these. I think Colby and Edgar didn't have data on here, but all the other ones do, and they all look like this. So it's not the fault of staff. It's not the fault of school boards. It's the implicit bias that's ingrained. The School Counselors Association, which is what all the school districts in Marathon County use, has really good resources on how to train people on implicit bias and how to work with and strategies for dealing with systemic inequality. So expanding those kind of things will remove barriers and decrease numbers like these. The military. Okay, so if you look at this graph, I know there's folks in the military right here. There are actually more minorities in the military than in the general population. But as you look, you go up the pay grades, less and less. And this has been noticed so often, and I'll go to the next one, the gender division one. Anyone who's in the military will tell you there's lots of female lieutenants, not a lot of female generals, not a lot of female admirals. Colonel Don Christensen, he's the Deputy Secretary of Defense. The more senior you get, the whiter and more male you get. And it's true. So what did the Department of Defense do? They went and removed barriers. Now, for jackets, when you have promotion lists, no more names, no more pictures, No more genders. It's all serial numbers. So they just enacted that just this last year because they did a big study, and the Army being kind of big, Armed Services, everyone but the Coast Guard because they're home. They did a study and they found out that when you have pictures, the black officers get promoted less than the white ones. So that's their way of ending disparities. Healthiest Wisconsin. Okay, this is Department of Health and Human Services. What does disparity mean and what does equity mean? We've heard that. So there you have it. Differences in incidence, prevalence, mortality, burden of diseases, and other adverse health conditions that exist between population groups based on our little list. Health equity. What does this mean? Fairness in distribution of resources and the freedom to achieve healthy outcomes between groups with differing levels of social disadvantage. That comes straight from Wisconsin, and that's what we'd be using. That's what we do already. Also from Healthiest Wisconsin. This is what we've been saying before. Eliminating health disparities is essential to achieving health equity. The aim of health equity is not to eliminate all health differences so that everyone has the same level of quality of health, but to reduce and eliminate those which result from factors considered to be both avoidable and unfair, removing barriers again. So, Office of Minority Health. They put out a report of cultural competency every year, and this tells you pretty much the same thing. Racial and ethnic disparities of the quality of health care associated with poor health and higher mortality rates among minority groups. That's a disparity. Among many factors that may contribute to these disparities, lack of diversity in the healthcare workforce. This is broadening your base to get a more diverse work group, as well as perceptions, attitudes, and beliefs of both patients and providers have shown to influence the quality of care received. So if you don't have cultural competence, you won't know that different minority groups respond better and worse to different approaches. Report cards. Who doesn't like looking at report cards? I know I don't. I got 4 kids. We got a D on 2016. It's better than 2013. It wasn't a D. It was a little bit worse than that. But this is the disparity grade. This is the health care that majority people get, Wisconsin, white, versus minority folks get. We did not do so well on that. So, DHS. This is just information that I told you before, and this is state level data. So, eliminating health disparities is good health policy and good economic policy. Supervisor Jong's about to talk about economic policy, and it says right here, increased incidence of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity among Blacks and Hispanics associated with increased number of missed work days due to illness, as well as lower household earnings. Because when you have what you and I might consider an entry-level job, they consider a job. And you may not get, and you probably don't get, sick leave, PTO. You miss a day of work because you're sick, you just missed a day of pay. So everything is interconnected. Good news, we got a little good news finally, solutions. And I'm sorry, this is a lot of bad information. Not bad information, but it's bad news. But there are ways around this, and there's the removing barriers and things like this, culturally and linguistically appropriate services. This is what DHS uses. These are the kind of things that we can use to fix a lot of what we have going on. And we talk about cost outlays, no cost outlay. We already have training budgets. We just have to do it a little bit differently. It's a paradigm shift. We're doing things we do now just a little bit differently. Trauma-informed care, we already do that. That's something like this. The ADRC has their inclusivity initiative, already doing that. We can expand it. Working through the GARE network, we already do that. We could expand that network, the Government Alliance on Racial Equity. Those are the kind of things we can do more and do better. It might help end disparities, or at least minimize them. Over to you.
So in 2019, the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce and McDevco conducted an evaluation on Marathon County and eventually developed a economic development strategic plan for our local area here. In the strategic plan that was developed, there were many concerns that they identified in regards to the economic portion of our county here. They acknowledged that the population and labor force was slowly declining, and two, the numerous cities and towns and villages within the county suffer from paroxysm. But however, although they had acknowledged that there were several weaknesses, they also acknowledged that there were several opportunities that we can obviously take advantage of. And some of the opportunities as identified are the following: the opportunity and ability to bring in new segments of region's population into the area workforce, including non-traditional categories. They included that the rebounder talent recruitment initiatives could bring back former Central Wisconsin residents back to Central Wisconsin, and also new events and festivals could draw in outside visitors. As part of their efforts, the Wausau Chamber of Commerce developed several specific strategies to address the opportunities available as identified during the study. And some of these strategies were outlined under 1.22 and 1.25 of their economic development strategic plan. 1.22 basically states embrace the local Hmong population and explore linkage to St. Paul, Minnesota, an important population center for the Hmong nationally. Strategy 1.25 work with major employers to attract workers from surrounding metros and states. Now, as I mentioned before, obviously 1.22 embrace the local Hmong population and explore linkage to St. as a leading destination for Hmong business owners and professionals. And also, in addition, as a component of that strategy is market Wisconsin and Marathon County as a Hmong-friendly location for Hmong talent to locate in other parts of the United States and globally. Now, I do want to state this is a segment that's specifically from the Wausau Chamber of Commerce. It basically says successful economies all have one thing in common: they attract outsiders. Thriving communities grow by attracting talented workers from outside the area, by recruiting new companies into the community, and by attracting visitors from near and far. The business world understands this. A company that fails to attract new customers will fail. A business must sell its products and services to an expanding customer base in order to thrive and grow. The same is true for communities, and the Wausau region is no exception. Wausau's regional economy has stagnated in recent years, while other metro areas in Wisconsin and the rest of the country have continued moving forward. The Wausau region must embrace change in order to reemerge as a growing economy. To attract talent from outside the region, the most important change is shift towards an outward-looking perspective. That was from the economic development plan developed by the Chamber of Commerce. So I do want to mention that as mentioned during the life report, stated that the perception of Marathon County is a good place to live for young adults and people of color and people with disabilities has decreased. By passing something simple as this, we continue to encourage that and reaffirm our commitment to ensure that Marathon County is a welcoming and inclusive location for all individuals, and is a more desirable place for individuals to live, work, and start their businesses. Now, I will also introduce a little bit of some of the recommendations provided by the United States Department of Justice under their Community Relations Services best practices. These are some of their best practices. So, post 9/11, the United States Department of Justice Community Relations Service Department under U.S. President George W. Bush released several best practices in an attempt to discourage racism, discrimination, and hateful acts. Two of the best practices suggested were the following: a government can reaffirm its commitment to the safety and well-being of its citizens by establishing an ordinance against hate crime activities or enhancing the punishment for hate crimes. It can also encourage compliance with existing equal opportunity statutes. And two, assuring that everyone has access to full participation in the municipality's decision-making process, including equal opportunities for minorities to be represented on appointed boards and commissions. Local governments might institute a policy of inclusion for appointments on board and commissions. The policy could require listing all appointed positions and notifying all racial and ethnic groups of open seatings through minority media. Now I will turn over the floor to Supervisor Conway to cover the contents of the resolution that the Diversity Affairs Commission is proposing.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Equality versus equity. This is the best public domain slide that I could find because, again, kind of cheap. You'll notice removing barriers. First image, hey, everyone's great. They've got supports, and it's equal except for the one on the right. So then we change supports, and now everyone's equal. But you remove the barrier, you don't need any supports. I like this slide. I'm a visual learner. Equality versus equity. What have we here? Okay, in about 20 minutes, this will be something on our docket tonight. And you might think this is a small deal. It is a small deal. This came through the ERC, and basically, this is for trail cameras. What is in yellow, we'd like to add. And this has gone through corporate counsel. It's perfectly legal. It doesn't say that we should be having English language. Now we should. And the reason for this was to make it the same as other language for like tree stands. No big deal, right? You're establishing a barrier for over 11,000 residents of Marathon County. 8.2% language spoken at home, not quite English. Sure, there's probably people that speak English in there. But there's really no need, there's no necessity to add a barrier when you could make it just a little bit different. Yeah. This is the online, and we got a paper copy, of Wisconsin Counties Association Black History Month edition for February. In it, you'll find that counties are making resolutions like this, and they recommend it. They think it's a good idea. Every Monday in the month of February, they're doing Black History Months at 9 o'clock. In October of last year, they had a pretty sizable diversity inclusion webinar that basically said the same thing, that making resolutions decrying hate was a good thing, and that is basically free advertising for your county to get people to come to your county. Community for all. Here we go. Finally. Sorry, it's getting a little long. No longer called No Place for Hate. Hate's a big word that's strong and it's hateful, right? I think it was maybe the Sheriff's Department, I can't remember where, that suggested that we, instead of decrying the negative, we accentuate the positive. Because this has been going around since June of last year. We've been working on this for 8-9 months. And the beginning here is basically our mission statement. And no one's had a problem with this. That's Supervisor Zhang already went through this. This is the beginning of the resolution. Next paragraph. Human diversity can be defined as, there's our little list there. Race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, gender equality, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, physical and or mental capabilities, even if you have a broken hand, and religious beliefs. Whereas the board recognizes diversity, inclusion, and equity as essential to a positive and healthy life within our communities and is committed to the goals of ensuring that everyone is welcome within the county's borders and to the protection and preservation of the rights, freedoms, safety, and security for all its residents. Generally, people aren't having a problem with that. Uh-oh, here we go. After reviewing data and information contained in the Marathon County Life Report, Alice Report, as well as state and national reports, the board acknowledges that disparity of opportunity and systemic inequality exist across our nation and within our community, and holds as a core value that one of the keys to overcoming such inequalities is sufficient representation of diversity in our policies, practices, resource material, budgetary considerations, and staff. The word staff, a lot of people have a bugaboo about that. They think we're going to have quotas. They think we're going to have affirmative action. That's not what we're saying. We're saying we want to remove barriers. We want to do things just a little bit differently. Right now, the strategic plan 3.8 is over in HR and Finance, or it might have been done already. Any HR person worth their salt will tell you that if you cast a bigger net, you will get a better pool of applicants. If you cast a bigger net, in our case, you will get applicants that are applicants of color, because there's not as many that live in the county. That's just math. We're not saying that we want to hire X amount of blacks or Hmongs or whatever. We want the most qualified people for all our positions. We just want to have a big pool to draw from. And we're not going to use names. We're not going to use pictures. We're not going to use genders. We're not going to use ages, because ageism exists too. So it's not that we're going to exclude anyone. It's not that we're going to elevate anyone. We're going to do things just a little bit differently to get a more diverse group. Advertising to, like he said, minority media. And historically, if you want more diversity, you advertise differently. That's another point. Whereas, leaders of county government, the board has a role in the creation of community environment where all residents can celebrate and embrace their rich multicultural heritage without the fear and intimidation of hate-motivated violence. Most of that is on the little name cards on the back of those. And that seems to be something everyone can get on board with as well. They're therefore resolved. Okay. Marathon County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims Marathon County is a community for all and rejects and condemns any hate-based activity and conduct directed to harm a person or a person's protected class. Again, that seems pretty straightforward. Last one. Further resolved, commitment to diversity, inclusion, and equity will be reflected in the county affairs at all levels, in the county government culture, in the behavior and actions of individual staff members and the County Board of Supervisors, and in the ways in which all policies developed, researched, and implemented in order to best serve all residents of Marion County. Now, we've changed this one a little bit since the last time. Like I said, we've moved this all over the place, getting opinions, and it's all been very supportive. At the exec committee last time, I think it was Vice Chair McEwen had pointed out, hey, you're telling us how to think, because we had the words action and perspectives. And you're right. So we took that out. Because that's not what we're doing. We are not policing anybody's thoughts. Everyone has the freedom to think whatever we want. We just don't want individuals to craft policy that will adversely affect any of our groups that we have. That's all. At the inclusivity and diversion webinar that I talked about in October, they had a number of different board members on it, brand new ones. The first this, first that. They had the first openly trans supervisor. They had like the first Indigenous lady on one board. They had the first Black lady on one board. And she related that as soon as she got elected, she had daily calls for her to resign. Daily calls for it, said that she wasn't wanted there. One of her colleagues, one of her fellow board members, began referring to her as the monkey. Yeah, she's Black. So we don't want that in Marathon County. I don't expect we'll have it, but if that happens, we want to decry it. I don't think anyone is going to say otherwise. So, sorry to end on a bummer like that, but that, in effect, is all the stanzas. I like English. And then we have sources. So we have everything that we used to come to these conclusions. All these are linked. These are not articles about studies or reports. These are the studies. These are the reports. This is the data. It's the actual, what we're talking about here. So there's no journalistic bias. These are the hard numbers that we used. And I don't want anyone to feel bad that they haven't noticed this before. So a lot of you have been here for years. And you're thinking, well, did this just happen? No, it's been here the whole time. Well, how didn't we know about it? We spent an inordinate amount of time sifting through data and correlating and comparing. And this is like this first serious go-through at looking at disparities. So this not having been done before, no one connected the dots. I mean, people of color, this is not a surprise to any of them. But now we have more diversity on the board. Now is a good time to open up a little bit, be inclusive for everyone, and check out the data. And we're not asking for a vote this month. We want you to think about it. We don't want to move fast. We don't want to push anything through. Check these sources out. Maybe you've got doubts. That's cool. We've vetted this stuff, but you don't know that. Check it out yourself. Go through them. Ask questions. When you get people that email and say, hey, you're being divisive, I don't like this, you can talk to them now. Have a discussion. Say, well, hang on a second. Did you know about this or that or this? Why don't you check out the dashboard? See what you think. I think you're going to come to the same conclusions we did. So we've got a whole month at least, more if you need it, before we'll vote on it. And now, for you to look on it.
We'll forward this over. I will turn the floor over to Commissioner Campbell to give a little background information in regards to the Towards One Wausau video clip before.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Jean. So tonight you've been shown a lot of data to paint the picture of some of the disparities and adverse outcomes of marginalized people's experience. There has been a lot of pushback, like Supervisor Conway was saying, in regards to the resolution. Some of the claims have been that racism does not exist here in Marathon County. The truth is, as great of a place as Marathon County, racism does exist here. The fact that some people have not experienced racism does not negate other people's truths and lived experiences. In fact, I can recall several instances where my children and I have been on the receiving end of racism. From football fields at high school games where my child was called the N-word, to elementary school where my child was told they could not have a play date because Black people were not allowed in their house. At preschool where my daughter was told she could not play with another student because she was Black. There was another incident where I checked my mail and found a handwritten card that says every N must die. I also remember after my spouse died, my children were outside trying to celebrate their father's favorite holiday, only for someone to drive by and call us the N-word. I have been in the community since 2008, and during that time I've supervised at the women's community. I've been appointed to the Diversity Affairs Commission, the Wausau Freedom and Liberation Committee, as well as United Way's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I founded diversity consulting business while attending graduate school. And I've been pondering the idea of moving somewhere else that welcomes diversity, equity, and inclusion. The idea of, I've been pondering, like I said, moving somewhere else that welcomes diversity, equity, and inclusion, that embraces my children and I. I cannot tell you how many different times people have asked me, what do I need? What needs to happen for me to stay here in Marathon County and to make this my home permanently? The answer to that question is that we must move alongside our mission, our strategic plan, and see one another, listen to understand, validate all experiences regardless of our own, embrace one another, and take a stand. This resolution is not meant to be divisive. It is only meant to unify, to bridge the gap in our community, and let people who are traditionally oppressed know that we stand with them, that their life matters. Towards One Wausau, it was brewed out of a devastating murder of Isaiah Powell and a subsequent imprisonment of Dylan Yang. Stereotypes of community conversation. 2 young children and their families' life would never be the same. The community needed to heal, and members of Towards One Wausau, they came together and started having conversations with the purpose of helping the community look past our differences and to find tangible and constructive means of working together. Supervisor Jean, can you push play on the video, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd say my favorite thing about life here in Wausau
Testing.
is kind of like the small community. It's not too small, but it's not huge either.
After, having children and settling down, you appreciate, small towns for a number of reasons.
Safe community, good education.
One of the best things I like is the diversity, even as limited as it is, and the potential that Wausau has to grow. I really love the potential here.
I love the spring, the summer, and the fall. It's beautiful. I've never seen anything like this. We don't have in Brazil like apple trees all over the place like you guys have here, so I'm almost like want to bound to them and say, oh my God, look at this, perfect. It's just beautiful.
Probably the love within the community. And everywhere you turn, you know, there's acceptance and friendship.
Wausau's always just been my home, and I just couldn't see myself anywhere else.
I do think there are places in our community where it's not that integrated and people can be really insensitive.
Sometimes the people here are very closed-minded.
There's a lot of change going on, and I don't think those people want to be a part of it. They want to keep the old and not see the new.
The lack of inclusion.
When I was young and I came here in elementary school, I felt so like an outcast, because I was the only Mexican there. Everyone was, white, they were Asian, but I just felt alone, because it was just me.
I've had a lot of situations where with cops pulling me over frequently. That would have to be my least favorite thing in the Wausau area, is dealing with that on a daily basis and what it does to your mental and emotional state daily.
Whether it's people don't recognize Native people are here in the Wausau area, or if it's clouded with the stereotypes people have about Native people, I think that there's a lot of work to do there.
I think Wausau it's in progress. I think it's getting better. I don't think it's completely integrated. I don't think that the whole topic of diversity has been accepted fully. I've been called a gook. I've been called a chink. Actually, just not too long ago, I was called a mongoose. I'm not really sure what that is. You're allowed to just go back to your country and go back to where you came from, where it's well, I was born here. Sorry, buddy,
4 children, 1 boy and 3 girls. And my 3 girls, they're not in the area. And they won't come back to the area. So they had to struggle at high school, not with their education, but with the treatment from others at the school. So I was trying to bring them back to the community, and because they're highly educated and I think they can be helpful to the community, but they refused to come back, and they explained to me they're not willing to come back just because of bad memory they had. I've been okay, but my children weren't, and I didn't know about it, so.
You never know what's in somebody's heart, but as a person of color, I've unfortunately got the experience of knowing racism even when the person might not even know themselves. The guy kept saying to us, well, we don't rent to riffraff. We don't rent to riffraff. And it got to the point that where, I didn't even go with my wife to the appointments because we didn't want to have that be an issue. I've been living under an umbrella of discrimination and bias all my life. So this is just one of the hoops that, as a person of color, I've learned to have to navigate.
Spearfishing controversy is part of our history here in Wisconsin, and it very much impacted Native people right here in central Wisconsin. It impacted me personally as a student in the public schools. I think the issues around Indian mascots and stereotyping races of people in public educational settings, that's an issue that we're still working through today. Because we have trust in ourselves and in one another, that we can tackle some of these harder issues like racism and violence in our communities, and past actions that are maybe still simmering but have never been talked about, so that everybody can heal, so that everybody has a voice, and that everybody feels like they're part of this place that we call home.
I'm always very careful about casting to prejudice or racism the fact that you don't triumph somewhere. I think it's a very delicate line. Does it exist? Yeah. Does it exist in Wausau? Definitely. So value yourself. Value how important you are and how you can make a difference. We are getting stronger as a diverse community and as a community in general.
If you compare today But the day I walk in this community, I've seen a lot of change, and lots of improvement. And with all that said, that doesn't mean we don't have problem. We just work on it to improve it and make it better.
I'm actually Wausau's first Hmong female officer. I take a lot of pride in that. I'm very happy to be a part of that department. I want them to be able to come to me, trust me, talk to me, open up to me, let them know that there's more, there's a lot of, opportunity out there. Educate yourself, go out, and really catch your dream of doing what you want to do.
What diversity and inclusion means that we make the effort to get outside our own way of thinking and embrace other people so they know their value.
One huge thing would be if I looked at the county board and the city council, our school boards, our boards of corporations, our foundation boards. I saw a reflection of, our community in terms of what people look like, that we really reflect who we are.
Seeing people of all races, genders, backgrounds, actively working together to build a great community where we all are spiritually, mentally sound and enjoying life together.
We haven't learned to live around each other yet. We stay isolated. So when something happens, there's no unity amongst us to stand on. Let's get out of our own way and get to know each other.
Part of who I am is being an Oneida woman, and I have a father who's German and English, and I'm married to a Ho-Chunk man. For my daughters, I'm especially proud to see them growing up and being able to, proudly say who they are.
She's only 8 months old now. Growing up here, this is her home, and we're gonna make it the best for her. She is an American, and she is a Wausonian, if you want to put it that way.
We'd like them to be seen without bias, and just like them to be treated fairly.
I can't change my gender, my race, and others can't change that either. And I think we just need to be accepting of each other and not hate others because they're the way they are.
Being friends with people who don't look like me or who aren't like me, it's so much fun because you get to listen to how they see things, and you don't always agree with it, but it's so interesting.
The most important thing in my life is to see progress for everyone.
I'm getting excited about this. I'm getting excited about the people I'm meeting and where we could possibly go with this. I'm getting excited, yeah.
I'm Kane Jacobson. I'm half South Korean.
I'm a community activist, a citizen.
I'm an engineer, I'm a father, and I'm a grandfather.
I'm a police officer with the Wausau Police Department.
Soy electricista, intérprete.
I'm a musician.
I'm a family physician.
I'm a student.
Sou do Brasil.
Ngwehue Oneoteaga ni.
I'm an artist. I'm Mexican American.
I'm a father, an educator, and an ally. Wausau is my home.
Wausau is my home.
Wausau is my home.
Wausau para ser a minha cidade.
And Wausau is my home.
Y Wausau es mi hogar.
And Wausau is my home.
Gunyoho Wausau.
Western, خونه من هست، شهری من هست، شهر من هست.
Wakyo Duslesi G Wausau.
Wausau is my home.
And Wausau is my home.
And Wausau is my home.
And with that said, we won't take up any more time, but we appreciate for this opportunity. We just want to note that this whole presentation resolution does not state that Marathon County is a racist place to be, but rather there are challenges that we are all facing, and we are going to face these challenges together. Thank you. We would be willing to entertain any questions or any concerns, if anyone has any questions or concerns.
Question by the board. Supervisor Gomes.
I have a concern. When you present something like the life report to us, I need some numbers, how many people you reported. Is it 12 people, 10 people, 10,000 people? To buy in your statistics, what you brought in the life report, I know nothing of where they're from, nothing. And so I'm really disappointed in that.
I think that would be a question that Commissioner Campbell can answer. She was part of the whole Life Report task force.
The survey went out to a wide variety of community members across different genders, ages, disability, and all of their data is actually on their website as far as how they were able to come up with that determination.
The information in regards to who was surveyed is also on the slides as well on their website as well.
Okay, additional questions? Vice Chair
Yes,
McEwen.
this is Donna Klaus.
Just a second, Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Supervisor Zhang and Supervisor Conway for the presentation. I think Supervisor Zhang made the point why I don't believe we need something like this with his, when he presented the core values of Marathon County. It does list diversity. If you look at our comp plan and our strategic plan 3.8, it lists that Marathon County is an open, inclusive, and diverse place to live and work. I truly believe that, and that's why the county board voted on this comp plan and strategic plan. When it comes to employment policies, I looked at Marathon County's employment policies, and if I miss something, I don't see anything in there that discriminates against anyone that we hire. When the emails that I've received, I have to agree with, and the people that presented tonight, I think something like this, at this politically charged time that we have, or I heard that at least, something like this tends to divide communities, not unite. And I think Marathon County is an example that other counties should follow by our core values, by our comp plans, our strategic plans. And I also have some questions about the Life Report. However, I went to the presentation of it. I go to it every 2 years. I support the Life Report. However, I didn't get interviewed. I've never been surveyed or interviewed. And I don't know, maybe I'm just in the wrong time or the wrong place. But I just wonder how many people they really did survey in Marathon County. And I guess maybe the people that are in my district that are sending these emails, I don't know if they ever got surveyed. But like I said, it was a great presentation. But something like this, I just hate having the board vote on issues like this that are very divisive. Thank you.
Supervisor Harris.
We have Supervisor Krause first, then Supervisor Dickinson, and then Supervisor Harris. Supervisor Krause first.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. I would like to compliment the Diversity Committee on all the work that they put into this and their professionalism. And I also would like to compliment the County Human Resources Committee for all of the women that they have hired and promoted and put into very professional positions. I was just very impressed when I came on the board and I saw so many talented, professional, well-educated, and very competent women in positions with the county. And I'd like to make a couple of points on the presentation that I'd like to bring up. Women are the majority of the population, 53%, yet we are considered minorities. And our frontline workers during the COVID epidemic are mostly women. They are nurses, caregivers, teachers, child care workers, food service workers, cleaners and custodial workers, and retail workers. So women employees are most impacted in the workplace by COVID. And then I would also like to mention that women are often not hired I did my research paper as an MBA student, my master's in business administration. One of the papers I wrote was on hiring women, and I found out that women who are single or divorced are often not hired. Married women are hired over single and divorced women. And I also would like to mention that on the poverty level, this report did not really focus on gender very much, but the low-income people that are receiving social services, the huge majority, are women. And so that the economic level of that there is in Marathon County, the poverty level, I believe would reflect women more than any other group, because the area of social services recipients, those are mostly women, and that's the lowest economic group you could probably find in the area. And about the life report, I had asked, because I had one of the board members as a speaker for fibromyalgia support group, which is a disability group. I had asked about how many people that they have surveyed, and I believe it was even under 1,000 people, which isn't very much considering this area probably has thousands and thousands of people. So they did survey only, I would consider, a small percentage of people in the county. And I guess that's about all that I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did look at the survey, and to answer that, there were actually 516 responses to the 2019 survey out of 53,000 households that weren't sent to, but that was how many households we have in the county. It looks like it was sent to 1,400 households, and there were 100 surveys sent through the United Way Partners, and then there were 2,000 emails for 516 responses, of which 92.6%, interestingly enough, were white. There were 18 Asian respondents, 7 Black, and 1 Hispanic. So for whatever that's worth for how we're collecting this data, who's responding. I will mention one thing, and there's a lot of data provided, a lot of federal data that I don't necessarily think applies. It speaks to the general conversation. I do think that the Marathon County data is what we need to be focused on, and so the life report does have value in that regard. But there's some incorrect data in there. One of them is the 37% of Marathon County residents experienced discrimination in the previous year. That's accurate. But it says it's a 19-point increase from 2017. There's actually a calculation error in the report where it says the prior year was a point value of 21%. The prior year was actually 30%. So we should be looking at a 30% to 37% increase in that question. And the only reason I point that out is if we're going to be making decisions based upon this data, we need to have accurate data. Additionally, that next slide, which talks about going from how welcoming the community is, we see the slide 2013, 2015 are around 70% saying it's welcoming, and then it drops off. Actually, about 20% of people said, I don't know, or neither, which was an increase of about 18%, 15 to 18% from the prior surveys. If you flip it around and say who is dissatisfied with how welcoming it is, in 2019 it was 13.4%. And then the prior survey in 2017 was about 10%. And then if you go back to 2015 and 2013, we hover around just around that 10%. So I think that's, again, how the statistics are given to us. And I'm not calling anyone out specifically. I'm just saying, if we're going to look at statistics to make decisions, then we do need the time. We do need a month to dig in and say, what is this data really presenting to us? And the last I'll just mention comes with COVID. We talk about disparity of the COVID problem. 54% of the COVID death are men, but men are only 49% of the population. I have not heard one person throughout the entire time of COVID talk about the disparity of death for males in regards to COVID. So I'll just add that. Thank you.
Supervisor Harris, and then Supervisor Lamont.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, you know, this conversation is interesting in that as a county board, in the past, in fact, I've supported a resolution in the past, and this county voted on it, you know, specifically talking about a minority community. In that resolution, we talked about the historical disadvantages of that particular minority community. We talked about the health disparities, the income disparities of that community. We talked about statistics from state and federal statistics. We talked about joining together to raise awareness about these issues. We talked about the special challenges of this minority group and celebrating this minority group, and how we're going to, as a county, support efforts to address the challenges. You know what that minority group was that I supported, that we supported? We consider that minority group. That was resolution for R67-20, proclaimed the third Thursday in November, Rural Health Day in my Marathon County. We proclaimed that rural communities have historically been had an agricultural-based economy. So thus, they face unique health needs. Sound familiar? They have limited public transportation. They have lower personal incomes, a larger percentage of uninsured people, limited access to other telemedicine, and limited access to broadband. That we're going to join together to acknowledge the assets of rural America while raising awareness of the unique health issues of rural America. That we're going to recognize the special challenges to maintaining good personal health in this rural community and celebrate the rural communities' contribution to the quality of life here in our county, and that we will support efforts to address challenges of meeting the healthcare needs of residents living in rural communities, which is a minority community. Now, I support that because I believe that we should do everything that we can to erase disparities wherever they exist, and that we should recognize those disparities and support people. You know, to nitpick now, to say, oh, is it 20% or 30% in terms of what the statistics were, I find that just frankly ridiculous, because this country has had a whole history of slavery, of discrimination. We are still facing that. In Wausau, in Marathon County, I love it. I came to this community. I love this community. But this community is not insulated from the rest of the nation. You know, we have challenges here, but what I love about where this community is going in terms of moving forward is that we recognize those challenges. We're willing to have conversations. We're willing to move forward so that we can improve our community, so that we can improve the quality of life of all of our citizens, just like we did in that Rural Health Proclamation. And that Rural Health Proclamation wasn't just for that one day, but by the way, because we said we will support efforts to address the challenges. So why can't we do that when it comes to minority communities that are African American? The only difference I see, is race. And, as a community, I think overall, we can agree that those disparities, or we should be able to agree at this point, looking at history, that those disparities exist. Those statistics weren't just the Life Report. And I think you can look at, in terms of, is it constitutional? The federal government has recognized disparities. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I don't know how many Supreme Court cases there are, too many to count, that recognize the history and the disparities. So I would ask, because I want this community to continue to thrive and continue to grow. Like I said, I love this community. And I feel like I adopted a son here, and I see so much beauty in this community and the people that live here and the possibilities in terms of prosperity here. And I hope that we can all recognize that and recognize both the challenges, both the contributions, and recognize everyone here and their history and celebrate that, be aware of that, but then move forward in trying to make this community better, because that's what the resolution says. It recognizes that we do have challenges, but that we're moving forward together. And that's where I would like us to continue to go. Thank you.
Supervisor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I received numerous emails of concerns regarding the second last resolve. The part where it says that we would condemn any hate-based activity or conduct directed to harm a person due to a person's protected class. And it seems that individuals are concerned about who determines what this activity is or conduct. And I guess reading it through a number of times here, we're not saying that we're going to police that, are we? But rather it's just saying a blanket statement that we reject that. Otherwise, who would be determining what is the activity? Who would be picked to determine that? That raises questions. And also, what about religious beliefs? There are definitely religious denominations that might speak out on certain protected classes. What about those?
Okay, we're going to go to the last question so that we can move on to the next presenter. Supervisor Lowe is still recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the emails that I've received regarding this resolution, there was a lot of concern over the two words equity versus equality. And so I had to look it up because there were a number of emails that referenced the difference between equality and equity. And so when I looked it up, there is a difference between the words equality and equity. And so for me, so to explain for everyone, equality would be, you know, everyone having equal resources. Equity would be the balancing out of these resources. For example, you know, if we have two people and they're picking apples and one side of the tree has very high, you know, apples very high up in the tree, that person would get a higher ladder. So everyone has ladders, but, you know, people who are picking on the tree with apples that are higher in the tree, they would get that higher ladder. And so, you know, it just makes sense to me that we would want equity in our community because we want everyone, you know, to have, you know, those apples. And so I don't see an issue with that. And I did respond to a few of those emails. And so unfortunately, when I did ask the question, you know, well, you know, what do you see or what do you want with the difference meaning in words? Unfortunately, I didn't receive any responses. So for me, I would really like to see more equity within our community because I really think that it would close the gaps between these disparities. And a lot of the disparities that we do see in Marathon County are in our rural areas of the county. So I don't see how, you know, this could be divisive because I think with this resolution, we just want to close those disparities or at least make them smaller. And I don't see how that is, that would be divisive or bad, you know, for our county as well. You know, a lot of the emails for me, when they were talking about race and hiring practices, this resolution isn't about that. It's about closing the disparities. And I think it's a good idea that the Diversity Commission, gives us county board members a month to think about it, to do our research, because I think there really does need to be a lot of research that we all could do individually to understand it a bit more. I know I did. And yeah, I just think this resolution is good for our county. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, and I want to thank the presenters, and we will now move on to item 8C, Women's Community Summary of Work and Completed Pursuant to the 2020 Contract, Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, and we have with us the Executive Director from the Women's Community, Inc., the executive director is Jane Graham-Jennings, and she has with her also Jessica Lund. And so I would turn it over to Ms. Jennings.
Thank you, Supervisor. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. I will stay pretty brief so that Jessica can really get into the discussion of our Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month and activities. But I just wanted to highlight, so if you all recall, last fall we went through a process where the women's community funds that came from the county, actually we are contracted for services now. So the women's community has been doing work to meet the long-term goals of Marathon County Strategic Plan in the healthiest and safest. I mean, we are specifically, those are the things that we do. So we have always been a partner with Marathon County in providing safety and health for people who are experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and human trafficking. So now what we do is we've highlighted some of those particular things that we have partnered with other Marathon County governmental bodies. So we do a lot of work with the Victim Witness Program at the District Attorney's Office. We do a lot of work with the Sheriff's Department and our partnerships with law enforcement throughout the community in all the jurisdictions in Marathon County. We have specialized programming that we're working on now where we do lethality assessments, and this has proven to be saved people's lives. If the law enforcement uses this tool and they determine that someone is potentially a high risk for homicide, they connect them directly to an advocate at that point so that we can provide additional support services and start safety planning with them. So that's something we've been doing. That's fairly new. We started that in October, and we hope that we will be able to implement that through all of the jurisdictions in Marathon County over time. We have partnered with the Child Advocacy Center for decades. In fact, we were part of the original planning and programming of the Child Advocacy Center, and our partnership with them as well as with social services in providing follow-up and long-term support for families who go to the Child Advocacy Center. We work with those non-offending parents as well as the children who have been abused, neglected, drug endangered, or have been witness to domestic violence. So that has been a decades-long partnership that we are the advocacy agency that provides all of those follow-up services. Two of the other things that we partner with, which is really going to get to our Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, with the District Attorney's Office. We have a partnership with the Wausau School District currently that has been in place for a number of years, that we provide prevention education to the health students in all of Wausau School District. And at the end of the week of that curriculum that we provide, we have a panel discussion, and Jessica will talk a little bit more about that so you have an idea of what we do in the partnership with law enforcement, with the District Attorney's Office, with a number of our community partners, and helping young people understand and recognize issues of abuse and control in their relationships, what healthy relationships are, and the critically important issue of what consent is and understanding consent in relationships as young people are starting to delve into sexual explorations with their boyfriends or girlfriends. And then we also have our diversion programming. So with all of the social media that exists, and now with texting, we have something called sexting, where young people are sending nude photographs of themselves to their boyfriend or girlfriend or someone in the group, thinking that this is a shared mutual thing. that relationship dissolves, and now that image is being shared around the school, around the community. And what young people don't know is that is actually technically possession of child pornography. So we have young people who are just doing things that young people do, not realizing the consequences of that. So this is a program we created that could help ensure that young people who are just not thinking so clearly don't have long-term consequences of criminal consequences because of that. So, and Jessica will really get into that. So we will be, we always send an annual report to all of the county supervisors so that you can stay connected to what the women's community is doing. Again, meeting your goal of the healthiest and safest community. We are a long-term partner in that. That is our whole mission, trying to keep people healthy and safe. And so this month is recognizing Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And Jessica Lind is the program coordinator for our Sexual Assault Victim Services Program. And she can go through the PowerPoint that you were all provided and fill you in on the information about what we do for our diversion programming. Thanks, Jess.
Hi, everybody. Do you have the PowerPoint that you can display on the screen?
It is being displayed as we speak.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're living in a world where about 1 in 3 teens report experiencing some form of abuse. And what we know is that 2/3 of those never report to a caring adult. So you'll notice that some of the statistics here talk about 1 in 11 females are reporting physical abuse and 1 in 15 are males. And so they are reporting experiencing physical dating violence in the last year. You'll also notice that 1 in 9 females and 1 in 36 males of high school students are reporting experiencing sexual dating violence in the last year. So thinking about this, pretty alarming in numbers. And what's even more alarming is that when we're looking at adults who shared their experiences as a teen, it's very common for adults to come to us at the women's community and share that their very first time that they were experiencing any type of violence in a relationship was when they were a teen, and that they never told anyone. So you'll see that the 26% of women and 15% of men experienced intimate partner violence for their very first time before they even turned 18. So that's not really a surprise to me. Being someone who works at the women's community, we see a lot of folks who come to us and tell us that they experienced something at a very young age. But it might be surprising to you. And so we wanted to share some of these numbers with you. If you want to move to the next slide, another important highlight for you to consider as we're talking about this tonight is that when we think about these numbers, is how much has changed for teens in our community since the pandemic and really across the nation. Teens are away from school a little bit more than they used to be now. They're very isolated from their friends. And the pandemic really puts people at a higher risk for abuse, especially digital abuse. Nearly everything we do now is online. Look at our meeting this evening. The majority of the people that are attending the meeting tonight are doing it in a virtual way. So the pandemic is being used by abusive partners to control and abuse. And the number one way to do that, especially for our youth, is online. So to get a better gauge of what's happening with our youth in Marathon County, the Department of Instruction did a statewide survey about a variety of topics. But tonight I'd like to focus on 2 areas in which they were surveyed. So here is the slide that talks about sexual or dating violence and how many teens in our Marathon County area experienced or self-reported some form of teen dating violence. And you'll notice that the majority of students experiencing this identified as female. And you'll see the alarming number who started experiencing this in the 9th grade. So Knowing this gives us really good data, and we know that we want to start teaching prevention materials at a very young age, and that's very key in the work that we're doing in terms of prevention. So if you move to the next slide, you'll notice that when we look at how many students are sending or receiving or sharing nude photos, we see that 19% of all of the students in our county are engaging in this. And that is a pretty high number, in my opinion. I feel that the data is also helpful for us in our prevention efforts as we're learning more about why. Why are students sending these photos, and how can we go about educating them surrounding the dangers of sexting? So how do we do this? If you go to the next slide, we talk a little bit about, Jane mentioned our prevention education curriculum. And so I'm really proud of this curriculum. I helped implement it many years ago. We have now a 5-day curriculum that covers healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships. It helps explain the dynamics of power and control, which really are the root cause of why abuse happens. We want teens to understand what dating violence is, what domestic violence is, and how they might go about helping a friend or a family member who may be impacted by these types of situations. We spend an entire day on talking about sexual assault and consent. We want students to understand what the laws are concerning consent in Wisconsin. And we also do exercises in the classroom about victim blaming, because we want people to know that it wasn't their fault and that they can seek help if they need to. Along with teaching them about unhealthy and healthy, we also incorporated social media safety, because we know that kids are online. They're using devices all of the time. And then when they started sharing photos, nude photos, we needed to explain to them that that is actually considered distribution of child pornography when they send, or in possession of child pornography when they receive. And so we really need students and parents to understand that that is a very serious crime in the state of Wisconsin. In addition, we want people to understand what we call grooming techniques, ways in which people may lure our kids from our county into doing things that they're not comfortable doing. And then finally, we've also implemented human trafficking, and we really want to talk about signs when someone might be being trafficked, and we want to dispel those myths and really talk about the reality of what is occurring. So we can't do prevention education by ourselves. We really need to rely on our community to help us. And we have, Jane talked briefly about our panel of local experts. We have a great panel of experts that we bring into the high schools, and that consists of law enforcement, our sexual assault nurse examiners who collect forensic evidence at the hospitals, our Marathon County District Attorney's Office, who covers the laws in Wisconsin and what might be a chargeable crime, our probation and parole. They talk about the consequences of what might happen and what someone would have to face if they were to be on probation. So if someone were to commit one of these crimes. Our sex offender registry specialist, they talk about what it means to be on the registry and all of the consequences that come along with that. And then finally, we want students to understand about healthy coping strategies. And so we have a mental health professional who sits on the panel and talks about the benefits of therapy and why it's important to seek help if something like this happens. So we really want to give students a well-rounded picture of how many people it takes in our community to respond to crimes like this, and what we can do to work together to help crime victims, or how to help intervene when someone does commit these crimes. And so this is a big part of our curriculum that we are doing in the local high schools. So if you go to the next slide, these are some of the high schools that we are presenting this curriculum in. Of course, we would like to be presenting it to all of the high schools. So these are regular partnerships, most of which are being held in health classes. So for example, in the Wausau School District, we teach in all 9th and 10th grade health classes. And from the data that you saw earlier, we really feel that this needs to be taught as early as possible, potentially as early as middle school. So if you go to the next slide, we talk a little bit about, we mentioned a little bit about the sexting diversion program. So as a result of the data collected by the Department of Public Instruction and a lot of the trends that we were seeing, our Marathon County District Attorney's Office, Marathon County Social Services, and the Wausau Police Department started meeting. And we started meeting and discussing the trends that we were seeing among students in terms of sexting, as it was really becoming a problem. And so due to the alarming number of cases, we felt that having an actual program where we could educate youth and parents who were engaging in this type of behavior might be a good deterrent. And that we really feel like there's a number of youth who don't really meet that level to be charged, but they certainly could potentially be charged with more serious crime if they continued in this behavior. So as a result of that, we partnered with Marathon County Social Services and felt that we would be able to do some education surrounding this. So since the program began, we have provided education to about 30 youth. And how it works is that law enforcement will make a referral to social services within their juvenile justice system. And that youth typically does not meet the level in which they're going to be charged with a felony. So they understand the consequences of the crime. They're going to be then enrolled in this diversion program. So what happens is they'll meet with the intake worker from social services. We will get the referral, and we'll have an education session at the agency so that the youth can really understand the power and control issues and understand healthy behaviors. So after they meet with us, then they are meeting with a local therapist. If they already have an established therapist, they would likely meet with that therapist, but otherwise they would meet with a designated therapist who is contracted with this diversion program, and they would do an activity called the ripple effect. And it really gives a bigger picture of the bigger impact of how this ripples upon many people in their lives, not just themselves, but their family, their friends, the person that they hurt in the process of sending or receiving the photo. So it's really kind of that bigger impact picture. And then finally, they meet again with that juvenile justice social worker, and they end up completing an essay. So talking about their experience, what they learned through this process, and how they're going to make changes moving forward. Ultimately, we really don't want people to end up being charged, going through the criminal process. We want folks to make change and to learn from these behaviors so that they aren't going to end up in the system in the future. So the goal for this program is really to get to the root of why, teach them why this is problematic and the negative impact of sending and receiving sex can have on everyone involved. So if you move to the next slide, briefly, I just want to mention another new initiative that we are kicking off. So at the women's community, we're certainly well known for our intervention, but we also want the community to understand that we're working hard on prevention. And so these are some of our preventative initiatives, and this is our newest one called SPARK. And SPARK stands for Students Preventing Violence and Reclaiming Community. We're able to launch this program, which is a peer-to-peer education program that we hope to bring into our schools, where we will have peer leaders and peer mentors teaching this curriculum to their very own peers. We know that from research and data that peers who educate their peers really have a greater impact. So we're able to do this because we have funding through what's called the Danny's Journey Education Fund, with the support of Mark and Kathy Volkman. And they are community members here in Marathon County who wanted to honor their daughter Danny Volkman, who ended and lost her life in a very tragic situation. So they are raising funds in the community to help us teach and provide prevention to our youth and community members. So again, I just want to highlight that February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and I invite you to follow our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram as we're educating, and that is where our education is happening surrounding teen dating violence this month. We are, as adults, we must continue to have courageous conversations with teens. When we see something concerning or notice changes in teens, we must ask questions. We must also listen, give support, believe them while they are being brave enough to share. I invite you to be one of those adults in a teen's life that you know. So I want to thank you for your time and your support in our efforts to help keep kids safe in Marathon County. Thank you.
Thank you for the great presentation, Jessica and Jane. Is there any questions by the board? Again, there's no questions from the board, so I want to thank you for all that you do for the citizens of Marathon County, and thank you for the great work. So we'll move on to review and discussion on Thursday meeting agenda items under item 9A, a memorial, life and public service of Brian R. Nelson. If you have the clerk read the memorial, please.
Brian R. Nelson, 57, passed away on February 9th, 2021 at Aspirus Wausau Hospital due to ongoing health issues related to glioblastoma and Cloves syndrome. He was born May 29, 1963, to Judy and the late Ronald Nelson. He is survived by his wife Nancy, mother Judy, sister Kristen, nephews, grandchildren, and many other family members and friends. Brian was an active member of Wesley United Methodist Church and the Wausau Symphony Choir. He was also a member of the Masonic Lodge and especially enjoyed the time he spent as a clown with the Beha Shrine Clown Unit. He served the residents of District 8 in the city of Wausau on the Marathon County Board of Supervisors from 2002 to 2004. During that time, he was a member of the Personnel Committee and Employee Resources Committee. In the passing of Brian Nelson, we have lost a leader who was dedicated to serving his community. He is hereby honored and remembered for his faithful public service. Now therefore be it resolved by the Marathon County Board of Supervisors that they enter this memorial into the proceedings of the board out of respect for the memory of Brian R. Nelson. A copy of this memorial shall be sent to his family with the sympathies of the board.
Questions? Okay, moving on to 9B, ordinances to amend Chapter 16 and Chapter 19 of the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, County Forests and Parks, Ordinance 05-21. Questions? Okay, moving on to item 9B2, Town of Reed rezone, Benjamin and Terry Mandeli, Ordinance 06-21. Any questions on that zoning change? Okay, item 9B3 from the Town of Knowlton rezone. Excuse me, Supervisor Lamont. Was this on the Town of Reed?
No, sorry, just trying to lower my hand.
Thank you. Okay, then we will move on to item 9B3 from the Town of Knowlton rezone, Robert and Kelsey Schwai, excuse me, ordinance 0-7-21. Any questions? Okay, item 9B4, ordinance amending the general code of ordinances for Marathon County, chapter 17, zoning code, ordinance 08-21. Any questions? We have with us Dominique from the Conservation Planning and Zoning Department. Dominic wishes to address the board.
Hi, thank you, Chairman Gibbs. I just wanted to make the board aware. I've been speaking with a few other supervisors in regards to the draft Chapter 17 zoning ordinance. And we will be proposing, or a supervisor will be moving forward with a proposed amendment that will be proposed at the next board meeting. So I wanted the rest of the board to be aware of that. And this proposed amendment is in regards to mobile towers or telecommunications facilities. And we'll be able to make that the draft ordinance with those amendments available to the rest of the board, so they have that prior to that Thursday meeting.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there any other discussion? Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to item 9C, resolutions. Item 9C1, Environmental Resources Committee. Item 9C1A, approving the 2021-2030 Marathon County Land and Water Resource Management Plan, Resolution 09-21. Any discussion? Supervisor Gums.
My question is, does anyone from zoning ever go out and monitor liquid manure hauling?
We have with us Mr. Daigle is on, I believe. Mr. Daigle.
Yes, I can answer that question. And the monitoring is done, it depends on the size of the farm. We certainly go out on complaints, first of all, and then farms over 500 animal units, we provide, quarterly reports are submitted to the office, and if there's any discrepancies, we can go out to the farm and monitor that. But as far as daily, if someone's going to empty their manure storage facility, we are certainly not staffed up to go to over 500 dairy farms and monitor on a basis, just to check in on them at this point.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a comment, Chair Gibbs, if you'd like me to go through a brief PowerPoint on the land and water plan.
Sure, go ahead.
Included in the packet. Okay, I will share that document. So get to me open here.
And we're...
Can you see the PowerPoint, or did I got the wrong one?
We've got the wrong one. We've got a green screen.
Okay. Let me try this again.
Paul, we do have it up on the county board screen.
Okay.
There we go. There you go.
All right. First of all, thanks for having me tonight. I'm excited to present this Land and Water Resource Management Plan to the full county board. I'll be brief. I know you've been on line or on a phone for quite some time. I just want to first congratulate our Environmental Resources Committee for taking a thorough dive and look into this plan. They spent nearly a full year at the committee level developing this. The last 6 months have been rolling out each chapter 1 month at a time, along with a public engagement plan that included the Environmental Resources Committee, public information meetings, citizens, supervisors, and the community. We reviewed the history of conservation in Marathon County, our current and highest resource concerns. We've developed specific goals and outcomes that we hope to achieve in this plan. We understood the current fiscal limitations and priorities, and gained a valuable input into land and water conservation. We had a lot of input through our local advisory committee and the technical advisory committee, and fully executed. Here's my presentation of sliding ahead there. We recognize, I want to recognize the CPZ staff, Jeff Pritchard, Kirk Langfoss, and Brenda Ichkowski for their generous input into this plan, along with the committee and our focus groups. This is a blueprint for healthy soil, clean water, and ultimately healthy people that meets the needs of our citizens. It's approved by the State Land and Water Conservation Board, who deemed it an excellent plan and perhaps the finest plan they have seen in the state of Wisconsin. We've got enthusiastic community support from public groups and through our public hearings from farmers, lake groups, citizens, agronomists, wildlife groups, the Wisconsin Valley Improvement Company, just to name a few. Chair Langenhan had hoped to co-present this with me, but he was unavailable tonight, so I'm going to present it on his behalf. The objectives of the plan include the coordinated public and private input into the plan, and framework to identify goals, objectives, strategies for the implementation of soil and water conservation. We also want to align the county, state, federal, and locally desired outcomes to protect and conserve the natural resources. You have to excuse me, my PowerPoint is not forwarding the way it should, so I'm gonna have to manually scroll through these. In this plan, the CPZ staff, we come to work each day to protect our community's land and environment because the economic strength and vitality of our community is dependent on the quality of our resources. We do this through leadership, accountability, community engagement, and collaborative partnerships so that we have thoughtful and deliberate use of our resources and innovative solutions to ensure Marathon County has healthy people, healthy economy, and a healthy environment today and tomorrow. The county, you all know this county well, nearly 140,000 people covering over 1 million acres, over 200 lakes covering 28,000 acres, 356 rivers and streams, with 473,000 acres of that land and farmland, growing a variety of crops. Our highest resources considered are an increasing acreage of corn and soybeans, which are annually tilled, which increases our erosion rates. We have a decreasing perennial forage base, which leads to more tillage and annual crops, as I stated. We have 255 miles of phosphorus impaired streams. We have increasing erodibility of crops being grown in the county. We have some shoreline encroachment and development that we're addressing in this plan. Our accomplishments over the last 10 years are many. We wish we could have got more, but this is what we did get. We've increased the number of nutrient management plans on acres in the county quite substantially compared to other counties. We've also increased the acres of managed grazing by about 10,000 acres over the last decade. Under Goal 2 and groundwater, we've enacted a metallic mining ordinance to protect our groundwater and surface water in eastern Marathon County where there's metallic deposits. We've created a soil health initiative in the county, and we got a safe water project where we closed idle manure storage facilities. We also developed a wellhead protection overlay district within the county's zoning code. To reduce land conversion, we've done that through a farmland preservation program where we've done a comprehensive revision of the farmland preservation plan and established 2 agricultural enterprise areas within the county. Our lake and reservoir management plans includes 13 management plans on eastern Marathon County lakes, and we have a water resources technician working on public properties to put in demonstration projects along shorelines and also working with private citizens to restore shorelines. We're the first county in the state to benchmark our agricultural performance standards and prohibitions to determine where we're at as we head into the next decade. Chapter 3 comes with very specific goals, objectives, strategies, and outcomes, which are too numerous to name tonight. But the overall goals include land and resources are protected and improved countywide. Our surface water quality is protected and improved. Our groundwater is protected and improved. And that we actively educate and engage community stakeholders to develop an understanding of our land, surface water, and groundwater quality concerns. This all heads towards our healthiest, safest, and most prosperous goals of the county. And why is this important? This ties back into our comprehensive plan and our strategic plan of the county and sets the context for this land and water resource management plan, as well as strives to achieve the county's mission. And I also think it really ties in with this COVID pandemic we're in, because our physical well-being and our environment is shaped by a quality environment. Chapter 4 is our implementation strategy, and it keys in on growing community engagement. Our North Star, our guiding principles are 3, and one is community groups such as the Old Plain Partnership for Integrated Conservation in Western Marathon County. We also have a strive for a goal of healthy soils for healthy plants, animals, and people, and encourage and inspire the 5 principles of soil health on our agricultural lands and our woodlands. The third leg of the stool is agricultural performance standards and prohibitions, as we strive to get all farmers in the county to meet these minimum benchmarks. Our highest priorities are implementation of these priority cropland best management practices, which support the 5 principles of soil health, implementation of the NR 151 agricultural performance standards and prohibitions, as well as keyed in on the impaired watersheds with the Fenwood Creek at the forefront as our pilot watershed. Our annual fiscal resources projection, right now our budget supports 7.7 staff. We target our highest priorities only with that staff. We have nearly $750,000 in county tax levy investment, and we also receive nearly $600,000 from the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, and the Wisconsin DNR. But we still, to meet the highest priority objectives in the plan, we'll have a $190,000 staffing shortfall and a $730,000 cost share shortfall. And that is not specific to any individual watershed plans or projects that we may need to develop. CPC has grown because of a successful efforts to secure grants, provide stable revenue streams, and partnership agreements. With that, that was again a brief overview. I provided detailed instructions on how to get much more information on our plan that was included in your packet, but I'm willing to take any questions at this time.
Well, thank you, Paul. And so I would open it up, and I apologize. I know we had worked out the PowerPoint presentation, and it was my bad. I apologize, but I'll open it up to any questions by the board. Okay, thank you, Paul. There's no questions.
Yes.
Go ahead. Okay, and.
Thank you for having me tonight.
I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
Just thank you for having me tonight if there's no questions.
Yes, there are no questions at this point. So again, thank you. So we'll move on now to item 9C, 1B, approval of the Town of Rib Mountain Local Zoning Ordinance Amendments, Resolution 10-21. Any questions? Okay, moving on to item 9C2, Executive Committee, and these items will be voted on this evening. We have item 9C2A, a resolution to adopt a residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan, Resolution 11-21. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Robinson and second by Supervisor Zhang. Is there any discussion? This resolution is in support of the Community Development Block Grant CDGB application. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the resolution to adopt a residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan, Resolution 11-21, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. And we will move on to item 9C, 2B, authorizing resolution to submit a Community Development Block Grant, CDGB application, Resolution 12-21. What is your pleasure? Motion by Vice Chair McEwen.
Supervisor Harris, second.
Supervisor Harris with a second. Is there any discussion? Again, this is the final authorization to submit in the actual application now. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in the favor of the motion of authorizing the resolution to submit the Community Development Block Grant CDGB application, Resolution 12-21, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Yeah, and we will move on to item 9C3, Public Safety Committee. Item 9C3A, support the amendments to statutory changes affected in the 2019 Wisconsin Act 106 and Wisconsin Statutes 343.31, Parent 1M, Parent B, regarding operating while intoxicated offenses, Resolution 13-21. Any discussion?
Supervisor Boots requesting to speak.
Supervisor Boots is recognized. Go ahead.
First of all, I would like to thank the OWI team, specifically Laura Yari, Judge Huber, and Sandra Ledoux for their presentation on this resolution. So just a few things I would like to share. This program was started in 2011. There have been 77 graduates and 11 dropouts. So as far as a metric, this program has about an 88% success rate. But the metrics are not why I'm asking for the support on this resolution. At our last public safety meeting, we were able to hear 7 powerful stories of success due to this program. 7 powerful stories of addiction, loss, family dynamics, incarceration, and self-medication, not in any particular order. These 7 stories had one common outcome after successful completion: sobriety, reconnection with families, and basically a now reformed, contributing member of society. If you read in the resolution, the way it reads, you look at the last 2 resolved, Marathon County does urge the Wisconsin legislature to amend statutorily changes affected to ACT 106 to allow at sentencing for fifth and sixth offense OWI convictions the option to impose and stay a sentence and to place the defendant on probation in order to participate and complete a treatment court program. May it further be resolved that Marathon County Board of Supervisors does hereby further implore the Wisconsin legislature to amend the statute to allow to reinstatement of any individual operating privilege once successful completion of a treatment court. This is very fundamental to our OWI court, and that's why they were asking for this. As many of you know, I typically do not support resolutions with no policy. In this instance, due to the support from our judges, diversion coordinator, and sheriff's department, I ask you to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boots. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Jacobson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I obviously vice chair of the Public Safety Committee with Mr. Boots, and I was there as well. I am asking for support of the resolution after I heard the testimony from many of the individuals who've gone through the program and how it changed their lives. It was very impactful on me. That being said, as I did point out at the Public Safety Committee, I'm not a fan of resolutions that send a message to the legislature that we don't like what you recently did. It's not our job to pass state law. It's the legislature's. That being said, I support this because I think, as it was pointed out by Judge Huber, who commented a little bit, trying to dig into the legislative intent in this. We don't know whether this was intended to cut off OWI courts and whether the legislature was aware of that. So I think this sends a message to them to take a second look at this or take a first look at it if they didn't consider OWI courts. And it is a good program. One of the questions I had was, we hear from the DA that, well, people who go into the system and are incarcerated are going to get treatment. The state of Wisconsin is going to pay for it because they're incarcerated. It seemed that we have a better recidivism rate because the treatment that people get through our OWI court, they're required to interact in the real world, apply the skills they're learning in the real world, as opposed to be, incarcerated, behind bars. So I found that to be very interesting. And then, also just like I said, the testimony was very compelling. The other question I had, which I would not have supported the resolution, this does not capture people who are on a fifth or sixth offense that have caused death or great bodily injury to somebody else. Those people are covered by a separate statute and are most likely headed off to prison. So for that reason, I support the resolution, and I hope you join me in doing the same when we take it up next week.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we will move on. Item 9C4, Diversity Affairs Commission and Executive Committee. Item 9C4A, Marathon County Resolution celebrating Black History Month, Resolution 14-21. Is there any discussion? Okay, no discussion, moving on. Item 9C5, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item 9C5A, a resolution awarding the sale of $5,830,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2021A, Resolution 15-21. Again, we will be having on next Thursday the award. The Finance Committee will be making a recommendation that we approve the sale of those bonds, and then the rest of that resolution will be filled out with the rate and the bond when the bond council sells those bonds on next Thursday. So again, this is the bonds needed to do the CIP projects that this board approved in its last year's budget. Any discussion? Okay, moving on. Then we have item 9C, 5B, a resolution awarding the sale of 19 million general obligation healthcare project building bonds, Series 2021B, Resolution 16-21. Same thing here. These are the bonds that will be issued and sold on the offer for sale, on next Thursday. That will be filled. That rest of that resolution will be filled in and brought to this board. This 19 million is the bonds used for the NCHC North Central Healthcare Complex remodel. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to item 9C, 5C, reauthorization of the self-insurance of workers' compensation, Resolution 17-21. Any discussion? Okay, we are down to announcements and/or requests. I'll just make a couple brief announcements. One announcement, we have a resolution that will be coming to the board that it wasn't included on the agenda, and that resolution is coming from the County Board Size Task Force, and that resolution will be a resolution to adopt the task force's recommendation to keep the county board size at 38. And is there any other announcements?
Supervisor Pizzuto.
Supervisor Bizzotto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to invite everybody, including the board and any community members who might be present, that the final Black History Month Courageous Community Conversations will be taking place next Wednesday, February 24th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. You can find the link and sign up to attend by probably just Googling Wausau Black History Month. It's hosted by LPRC Consulting and Marathon County Extension, and it will feature a panel discussion on racism and Black women. I kind of missed the part where in the agenda 9C, I think it was 4, on the resolution celebrating Black History Month. I would encourage anybody who's interested in Black History Month and what it means to attend that Black History Month Courageous Community Conversations to get a better understanding of what it looks like to celebrate Black History Month and to get a better, an understanding of the issue of race in the county. So thank you very much. I hope you'll join us for that community conversation.
Thank you. Supervisor Van Cray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some supervisors that I work with at a committee level already know this news, but I wanted to share with the full board that my husband and I are expecting our first child in 4 short weeks, a baby girl, and we're really excited. And it's weird that I haven't met most of you or seen most of you, but if you saw me, you could tell that I was pregnant.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations. Any other announcements and/or requests? Okay, we are down to item number 11. Vice Chair McEwen with a motion. Is there a second? There's a second by Supervisor Jacobson to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.